Hey folks, this is Zach Hubeck with WAV. I hope you're all doing well. We've got a couple of special guests here for a new edition of AirWAVs. I have folks from Ruckus and Tarana Wireless with me on the call. And folks, today is all about the top 10 things you want to ask your service provider in tribal and indigenous communities. You know, folks, there's a lot of projects that we see. There's a lot of federal subsidy and state subsidy out there that is very helpful in tribal and indigenous communities. And we want to make sure you, as that end user, are aligning yourselves with service providers that are going to serve you well, that are going to help train you, that are going to be there in the long term to not just get that quick project and leave, but be a true partner for you. So we're going to help you out today with those things. We have top 10 questions you're going to want to ask your service providers when you engage in a fixed wireless project or a networking and Wi-Fi project. We're going to help you out tremendously here. So let me start with my guests. I've got Tim Jaeger from Tarana. Tim, why don't you introduce yourself? What's your role at Tarana and how you've impacted tribal or indigenous communities before? What's your involvement been, sir?
Sure. My name is Tim Jaeger, and I manage the tribal and indigenous practices here at Tarana Wireless. We have been focusing on this for the past few years. I want to say 3 years. We are currently engaged in 31 different tribal communities or indigenous communities in US and Canada.
Awesome. Beautiful. Tim, thanks for your time today, sir. Great to see you. All right. Mr. Yeagle, why don't you go ahead, sir? You're with Ruckus. Tell us all about you.
Yeah. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. I'm the worldwide director for sales engineering for our inside sales teams, and that includes the North American distributors that we have. I've spent 30 years in the networking business. Many of them spent some time with the tribal and indigenous communities, building out some of the casinos that they've got, utilizing Wi-Fi and wire-type technologies in conjunction with some of the fixed wireless that Tim's going to talk about. So we've got experience that we can leverage and help the communities engage with their service providers in an appropriate way to get that successful outcome that they're looking for.
All right. I love it. Well, very good. Well, why don't we jump into it, boys? First, we've got to really identify who's who in the channel here. So obviously you guys are with manufacturers, Tarana manufacturing next generation fixed wireless technology, gigabit speeds over the air, fiber-like speeds over the air to bring connectivity to these communities. And then of course, Matt, you're with Ruckus, and you guys are offering networking and Wi-Fi solutions within the four walls. So this is a perfect marriage here. I'm with WAV. We're a distributor for both of your product lines, and we work with service providers, folks like EnterTribe, Bonfire Engineering, and they serve the tribal and indigenous communities. And EnterTribe is a great tip of the cap to that organization, exemplary in this vertical market, integrator who's all about training, making sure these communities are self-sufficient when a project concludes, and providing training and really being there in the long haul. And so for folks that are looking to engage on a project for anything connectivity, how do I get internet access to my community? And then how do I leverage it throughout my community in municipal buildings or hotels or, of course, casinos or for public safety? If you're looking to engage in a project, these are the top 10 questions you're going to want to ask your service provider to make sure they are working with you in an exemplary fashion like an EnterTribe. So why don't we jump into these questions, boys? And, why don't I start with Tim here? Question number one, folks, have you deployed a tribally owned network before? And what's your sustainability plan? If you can talk about that a little bit, Tim, and why that's an important question, that would be great.
Sure. The reason this is such an important issue out there is the tribally owned and indigenous networks offer some unique challenges that other networks don't have. And you are looking for a partner that has experience in this arena and has done this before. And you want to make sure that this partner that you're working with is not just in it for a short term, but in it for the long term as well. Some of the sustainability plans and working with Intertribe, we've seen a masterful job of the way that they build in sustainability into their networks is train local personnel to manage, operate, and deploy that network. At that point in time, now you have personnel that live in that community and are part of that community that maintain that network. It not only creates jobs, it also creates the ability for the community to be self-reliant on there. And if you work with a service provider or an integrator that hasn't done this before, they may not know these unique challenges out there. As long as you vet your partners that they can and do this and have done it in the past, it'll lead to a much smoother deployment and network operation.
All right, love it. So, the second question here, fellas, what problem did you solve in those installations? That's really kind of a sniff test. What are some of the gotchas in a networking and Wi-Fi environment? And so we'll start there with Matt, but then we'll bounce over to Tim in a fixed wireless access area. What are some of the challenges people may encounter that a sophisticated service provider is going to know how to resolve? Matt, why don't you go ahead first?
Yeah, so from kind of that four walls environment, whether it's a casino or hotel, I think one of the things that service providers should be looking at and ensuring in the design is this design of a Wi-Fi or the network in general capable of handling the information that's going to be that's crossing the network, right? It's the applications that are running across the network and the needs for less latency and all that kind of technical information. Also, I think what a lot of people miss sometimes when they're doing these installations is a design for density or a design for coverage. And what I mean by that is we may be in, say, a hotel in a conference room where I want design for density. I want the maximum number of people to be connected to the network and have a good user experience versus coverage where maybe that's on a casino floor where I want people focused on gambling, right? Not watching YouTube or whatever. And so I'll just make sure I have got a good even coverage model. And I think those are two important points that your service provider, the person that's doing this design and implementation for the communities, take into account, because there's different times I want density versus coverage. And I think that's a very important fact that we need to take into account.
Awesome. Tim, why don't we go on the outside of the four walls? Let's go into the fixed wireless access realm. What are some of the gotchas or problems you've seen in the field that a service provider should know about?
Sure. The biggest one is network infrastructure. You need to make sure that all your network infrastructure is compatible, that you know all the logins, you know all the passwords, that you have access rights to the network gear when you are starting to deploy. There's nothing worse than when you're deploying a wireless network, but you don't have the login to get into the router to actually pass traffic to that. So again, stage everything before you go out into the field, make sure it all works together. And then once you're in the field, everything is properly labeled. You don't hook the fiber that's supposed to go into the west facing distribution point into the east facing distribution point, and just basic best practices when you're deploying a network on there. And get support from the manufacturers. Make sure that they know that you're starting to do this deployment and that they have, for lack of a better way to say it, a Tiger team ready to support you if you run into any configuration issues or deployment issues as well.
Awesome. Love it. All right. As far as references for similar projects, what are some things people should be looking for in a reference? Let's talk about that real quick. Matt, did you want to go first and Tim will follow up?
Yep.
Yeah, I think, from a reference standpoint, especially, we're going to focus kind of more on the hospitality side of things and maybe the community
Hmm.
town centers and stuff like that are going to utilize wireless type networks. And that's making sure that the specific service provider has done maybe a large venue or a high density deployment, ensuring that you get the density that you need for the activities that might be happening in that environment, right? A great example is I'm actually here in the southwest part of Colorado right now, and we're seeing, just coming up from Albuquerque, and we're seeing a lot of events happening in the tribal communities, concerts and stuff like that. If you get a service provider that doesn't understand how to support the 10, 15,000 people in a concert and provide the necessary communications that they want, that becomes a problem. The same with hospitality, right? The hospitality part of things is, how do I better my guest experience? And having a service provider that knows how to work in that hospitality environment and pull out that good guest experience is something you really want to focus on when you're looking at references.
Yep, absolutely. Not just are you able to install switches and APs? You really got to
Right,
understand the customer. What is the user
right,
experience going to be when you enter this
yes,
hotel or casino? What about IoT? All of
yeah,
these questions need to be asked
yeah.
of a
Eh,
reference and what has been a similar project.
right. Understanding when Wi-Fi is just not good enough, it's got to be better. That's
Oh, yeah.
kind of our motto.
All right. Love it. All right, Tim, any advice as far as references for similar projects?
Yeah, when you are looking for a partner, make sure that they have references on projects that are similar in scope, similar in size,
Yep.
and similar in hardware as
Yep.
well. There are nuances for all three of those scenarios out there. So as long as they've got references in those areas, you'll be fine.
Love it. Yeah, I think one of those areas, when we talk about the laws of physics, although Tarana seems to bend those laws of physics, when we talk about an area that has a lot of foliage or trees or non-line of sight environments, you don't want a reference or a service provider who's done something in Arizona or very, very flat areas in Indiana. The projects are different. The physics are a little bit different. But Tarana has proven, hey, our products can be pretty bulletproof in both environments. You just want to make sure a service provider knows and understands your environment and your scope of project. Tim, would you agree with that?
Definitely. And
Beautiful.
I would also include complementary hardware as well. You want to make sure that they have deployed similar hardware in other places.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. Let's talk about grants real quick, gentlemen. Grants can certainly be a blessing and also a lot of work as well for a community. There's a lot of reviews and checks and balances and, a lot of audits that happen in that situation when you are awarded a grant. Why do you want to link up with a service provider that's done grant projects before? Tim, go ahead first, and Matt, if you want to follow up.
Okay, sure.
First and foremost, working within the grant projects and within the reporting structure and all of the requirements that are in the grants, it's a huge learning curve. If you work with somebody who this is their first grant they've ever done, they may be phenomenal in deployment, but if they don't file the right reports on a timely basis, the money will quit to flow. And
Mhm.
so you want to make sure that you've worked with somebody that has been successful in deploying grant projects before, because again, whichever grant you're deciding to use or work with, they have detailed instructions that you need to follow.
Yep. All right. Matt, anything to follow up there, or is that pretty good answer?
No, I mean, that's a great answer that Tim gives. I think one additional comment around, the whole grant, and even in the U.S., if you're a school district, you'll have that E-rate funding that you could possibly add to maybe some grant money and make it simpler for the community to obtain those funds. So well, Tim's spot on. You need somebody that's done the process, gone through the process, knows how to write those responses to be successful. And I think the only thing is if you're a school district, maybe find one of those service providers, or find a service provider that has worked that E-rate system in the past,
Sure.
right, to help you through that.
Yeah, great example. All right, awesome. So boys, let's talk about some of the longer term costs to manage the network, not only for your guys' products, but also what are some things our tribal indigenous community should be asking service providers about long-term costs?
Sure.
Tim, go ahead. Start off.
The biggest way to look at this is add moves changes. Your network is a living, breathing organism. It's going to change over time. You're going to have different users come and go. So you need to be able to manage the add moves changes of what the network evolves to. And then also, you have, again, on a lot of these requirements, a certain bandwidth that you have to deliver to customers. And as your network grows, you're going to have to adjust the bandwidth feeding the network, or the bandwidth distributed throughout your network, to make sure you meet your requirements as well. So it is not only soft costs in humans, but also it could equate into hard costs into hardware, depending upon what the requirements look like.
Sure. Matt, go ahead. Follow up.
Yeah, no, I mean, Tim used my analogy of the whole living, breathing network thing. That exists in Tim's world, and it exists in our world, right? When we plan out our networks from the beginning, a lot of times we don't think of what could happen in the future, right? And this network will grow. And can I allow it to grow without ripping out walls, without making major changes to structures and stuff like that to grow the network? And then finally, wireless, to Tim's point, and we're both in the wireless business, it's a living, breathing thing. And too often we leave our wireless networks to their own being, and not look at it and say, hey, am I providing enough coverage, the right density over time? Because things move,
Yep.
right? Machines move, metal file cabinets move, what have you. That changes the way the network can react to its environment, and that needs to be reviewed every so often. So having some analysis done, every year, every other year and a half, that kind of thing, is always a good, prudent thing, and that you got to work into your long-term management costs of the network.
Yeah, case in point, gentlemen, when you have a sophisticated service provider you're working with, you may be working on multiple grants, not only to bring connectivity, and let's use a school as an example, but they may also be working on a one-to-one project as well with you, where you could potentially have all your students have a tablet. And if you are awarded that tablet award, your Wi-Fi network and even the pipe and the Tarana Wireless bandwidth that's going to need to come to that school or that district, you're going to need to look at bandwidth consumption, because now you're going to have 400 students, or however many students you have, that will have a tablet, that expect to compute, that will be expected to take tests and do homework, all running at the same time. And so your sophisticated service provider is going to help you in those environments look way out ahead, because this is a marathon, and say, these are the things you should plan for if you're planning for that. So case in point, a good example there, fellas. Would you concur with my findings?
Oh, yes. Yeah, especially in the school environment, right? Where you continually add iPads, and then they like to change their room configurations a lot, right? Mm-hmm. It worked well last year, but this year something happened, right? And so having that service provider that can go in and is looking at the network all the time is very important. And again, that adds on, obviously, to the cost of managing the network as a whole.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, fellas, why don't we give some examples about training And let's use air quotes about the project is over. This is a living, breathing network. Your service provider should be there in the long haul. But what kind of training should a service provider be offering for both of your wares? What kind of training should they be offering to that community? We're going to start with Tim, and then we'll follow up with Matt.
Okay. So, in my opinion, once the project is quote unquote over, that's just when training begins, because you are going to have turnover in personnel. You are going to be potentially expanding the network, adding new personnel. So ongoing training needs to be a part of the sustainability plan. So as the network grows and upgrades, you stay current with what the technology is and what you can do, and that you always have at least one person, preferably more than one, that can handle any particular task in the network to manage it.
Yep. And then, Tim, with your wares, that could include safety and climbing training. That could include surge protection best practices when delivering a residential node to a home. How do I ground this so it's safe for that homeowner? All of those things. So plenty, not just managing the network, but also how do I physically do anything with this network? All right, Matt, what would you say, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that, and I think additionally, learning not only like ours, whether it's switching or the wireless access points, learning that configuration of your gear and going beyond, and you need a service provider that can go beyond, right? Because there's going to become times where maybe you've had a security hack. How better can I secure my switches or my access points in addition to what I'm doing with my firewalls and other security devices that I may have there, and how do they all work together? And that service provider needs to help train the community to look at the network as again, this living being that is changing, right? And people are trying to get into it and all that. And if I know more about the deepness of what I can do with each one of the pieces and parts of my gear that I have in the system, the better off I can protect myself. And I think it's the responsibility of the service provider to ensure that as they're moving through the design and implementation phases, that they're ensuring that they're training up the customer to use the products the way they're intended to use, and a little bit beyond.
Absolutely. Tim, did I let you finish your thought there, sir? Or was there something else you wanted to add on the training there?
No, you let me finish that. That was fine. Thank you.
All right, beautiful. I think, this next question, what's the latest indoor and outdoor technology you've deployed? Let's talk a little bit about, there might be a little bit of alphabet soup here, Matt, when we talk about 802.11. But if you've got a service provider who said, we've got a great 802.11b network we just installed the other week, we know we potentially got problems.
Yeah. that should be an immediate red flag. Yeah, that should be an immediate red flag.
So what's the latest?
A little bit faster than 11 megabits.
What's the latest in Ruckus technology?
Yeah, so Wi-Fi 7 is the latest in the wireless technology, and it's all finally coming together with all the FCC approvals, the Wi-Fi Alliance approvals, and all that. And Ruckus was the first vendor to have an actual enterprise class Wi-Fi 7 access point on the market, right? And the great thing about it is that it's being used in all the Alliance testing of the other products. So going with a Ruckus solution ensures that you've got compatibility to anything else that might be out there. Now, the great thing about the latest and greatest Wi-Fi technology that we have out there in Wi-Fi 7, it can enhance a lot of the things that Tim and the Tarana guys may be doing with our 6 gigahertz band that is out there, and allow for some significant data transfers within the facilities where Tarana can have, to the outer wall. We can take that and create a wireless kind of major pipe with that new 6 gigahertz technology, and that's more indoor. Obviously, outdoor, there's some things that may be useful to do what we call meshing with the 6 gigahertz, to where I can daisy chain a couple of outdoor APs, right? And maybe minimize some of the cost for there. But knowing that service provider has played with, touched, integrated, the latest, at least Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7 technology is important, because there are differences in the frequencies that the radios are operating at, and certain things happen. We call FM for a reason, right? Because it's somewhat magical. And knowing those magic, how to tame that magic is important when we start talking about the Wi-Fi 7 type technologies.
Got it. Tim, how would you answer that question about technology? What's the latest and greatest?
So latest and greatest right now is the 6 gigahertz. Again, Tarana was the first one to get FCC approval for the 6 gigahertz, and are actively deploying that within multiple communities. Again, it's kind of alphabet soup when we start talking about all these frequencies and everything like that. But what we have the ability to do is to deliver gigabit service to the end user now, and then hand that service off to Matt and his team to deploy out state-of-the-art indoor wireless and connectivity to whatever the entity is, whether it be a school or a tribal community as well.
Nice. I love it. All right, number 8, probably one of the questions not a ton of folks are going to understand, but Tim, why don't you take this one? Tribal community, indigenous community, asking a service provider, are you accredited to receive ACP funding or similar programs? What is that exactly?
So ACP funding was a program by the U.S. federal government where it subsidized high-speed broadband to the residents, and it was, I want to say, the end of February was the last piece that was officially done.
Okay.
There are 2 different competing bills within the federal government, one from each party, name different things, basically to replace the ACP funding out there to operate as the same type of program. The key to this is your partner who you're looking to work with on the network, whether it be an internet service provider or managed service provider, with a managed service provider basically managing your network for you. They have to be accredited to accept that fund. If they're not accredited to accept the funds, it doesn't matter if they're available or not, you're not going to be able to utilize them.
Sure.
So as you start to deploy and the new programs make it through the system, you need to make sure that you are able to take full advantage of those programs when they come out.
Nice. And boiling it down to a more basic definition there, Tim, the ACP funding, not only is a service provider going to bring this hardware and this connectivity to your community, but if they are not an accredited ACP funding or a similar program service provider, you would not be able to recognize discounts off of your monthly internet bill, if we were to phrase it alternatively. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Yeah, or federal subsidized.
Perfect.
Federal subsidies as well.
Exactly. So please make sure those folks are accredited, even if that program is available. Like Tim said, if your service provider is not accredited, you are not going to be able to take advantage of that. Okay, great point. Thank you, Tim, very much. All right. I think this is a question here. Does this network have a mobility aspect? If you're a tribal or indigenous community, you're going to want to ask that service provider, do you ever anticipate us needing mobility? Why would they ask that question, Tim?
So if you need broadband to a first responder vehicle or anything that is mobile, that is your mobility aspect of it. Or you want to take your account that you're on at home and access it in the park or something like that.
Yep.
We are purely fixed wireless. We do not have a mobility play. That is why we partner with companies such as Ruckus that can, again, offer a mobility play out there in a reliable fashion that basically gives the best quality of service to the community.
Absolutely. And I think Matt hit the nail on the head earlier, but as far as meshing outside of that community to get into that park area, or meshing outside of that school to get into the parking lot or an adjacent football field or things along those lines. So I think that's where we're going with this. Matt, do you have any comments there, sir?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that we've said so far on this. And sometimes I think the communities don't understand that what the mobility aspect of their network might provide them, right? Whether it's first responders, whether it's being able to say a phone call, right? A voice over IP phone call, moving from my home to a fixed wireless, say telephony system. There's other products that are needed to do that, but what are the desires of that community, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times I don't think they understand mobility enough to kind of maybe get the innovative juices flowing to say, hey, we could do this and provide some significant value to the community in the meantime. So
all right, love it. All right, boys, let's wrap it up with some AI. Everybody's talking about AI now these days. Let's talk a little bit about some AI tools that maybe your guys' products have already ready to go, canned in the box. And then why would these communities think about AI tools? How is that going to help in this equation? Matt, you're first.
Yeah, so obviously Ruckus is knee deep, or actually shoulder deep, into the AI environment with integration of artificial intelligence into our management and analysis tools. So we call it Ruckus AI. It's built into a product we call Ruckus One, and it helps manage the network. I kind of look at our AI implementation in a lot of different ways. It gives me an extra set of hands when I'm troubleshooting, right? It will tell me, hey, go look in this area of the network because that's doing X, Y, or Z, right? Or if you continue this trend of throughput or bandwidth requirements that we're seeing over the network, you're going to have to increase these links, right? Or add an AP over into this room because people are moving from one AP to another one that's close by and then moving directly back, right? So we can be that technician, we can be that network engineer that you may not have all the expertise that we can build into the AI tool, right? And it tells me when I need to grow, what I need to change, right, in my network to help manage, make it simpler to manage, right? Because not everybody, as we go into radio resource management and all that, have that engineering expertise to tune the network. AI does, and that's a built-in tool that Ruckus provides its customers.
I think that's pretty cool, from a predictability standpoint, saying, hey, Mr. Network Manager, we anticipate in a year and a half now, based on your bandwidth consumption and the 400 new tablets that have been brought online,
right,
you may need to upgrade your switch, your wired platform to multi-gigabit down the road. And this might be the date that you might need to do that. And, oh, by the way, your Tarana network probably needs to be upgraded as well, because we need a fatter pipe coming into the building or this community to be able to serve and accomplish all of the things you need in your network. So that's pretty cool. I like it.
That's a great analogy, Zach, because I think, that kind of third position I look at Ruckus AI, our analytics environment, is every business has a business analyst telling you, hey, this is where I've been, this is where you're at, here's where you're going to go if you continue down this path, right? Why not have the same thing for the network, right? That is kind of living and breathing, and if it goes down, could be costly to the organization. So have that network analyst, right, there by you, and you're really not paying anything for that individual, which is a machine. right? So
Love it. Very good. Tim, any closing thoughts on AI?
Some of the things that we're starting to see with AI is scheduling maintenance windows. Scheduling a maintenance window
yeah,
is far less expensive and less dramatic than an outage.
Yep.
And again, when Matt and his team can tell you that, hey, you're going to need more bandwidth, you can then start to plan again the outside of the network that we're working with, whether it be you need a larger pipe to supply the Tarana radios, or you need to somehow upgrade your bandwidth from your Tarana radios to Matt's network so he gets what he needs.
Yep.
So with the maintenance windows is the big thing that we're seeing.
Awesome. I love it.
good point.
Well, cool, boys. This has been a great session. I want to close it with one question not listed here. I think if for any tribal or indigenous community, a great question to ask a service provider is, what are some of the questions we should be asking you that we are not asking you? And if you have the right advisor, they're going to surprise you with 2 or 3 things and inform you and say, these are the things you should be asking me. You did not ask me about mobility. You did not ask me about this aspect of the network. And based on my foresight, I think this is what you should be asking me. So, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for all the help you're providing to our tribal and indigenous communities working together to bridge the digital divide, if you will. And folks, if we've armed you with a couple of great ideas or helped you learn how to speak service providerese here, we've done some good work. So hopefully this has been beneficial for everybody. Tim, Matt, I want to thank you guys for your time. And folks, if you do get stuck, we're here to help you as your advisor. It's just not go find a service provider and good luck. WAV, Ruckus, and Tarana, we are here to support you if you need help in these projects. So thank you guys so much, and hope you have a great day.